Italy, all over the world. Welcome to this special episode of Lazio Lounge. Special episode because this is incredible. It's incredible. Probably the biggest scandal ever. Ballon d'Or, Patrick didn't win it. I mean, how in the hell is this possible? Alasdair, stop drinking because you've been drinking too much already. After the performance of yesterday, how can it be possible that Patrick didn't win it? I mean, terrific performance, right?
Was that Patrick's lawyers on the phone for you there?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, another clean sheet with Big Patrick in the team. A bit more grinta to the team in the second half last night, at least, than we've seen before. I mean, you could call him the secret to Lazio's success at this point.
The picture of yesterday night is Patrick Crouch waiting for the penalty and not watching that. I mean, I felt pretty much the same thing in Distinti Nord. I was walking around because a couple of people left before that, and I was so nervous. And my daughter was watching me saying, "What are you doing?" And I said, I feel a little bit tense.
Yeah, it was funny because I don't know if I've ever noticed before how many people in a crowd can't watch a penalty. But I was there working last night, and the press box obviously facing the pitch, but right in front of you is where a lot of the fans are sitting. And I kind of looked up before Ciro took the penalty, and there are all these fans turning around looking directly at me. And it's like, guys, this is a big moment. What are you doing? Turn around. And
I know, but
like all these people, you just can't watch.
Last second penalty. I mean,
Yeah,
even Sarri didn't watch it. And it was funny, Alasdair, because he blew the whistle after the penalty. I thought he would have given like 1 minute for Fiorentina to play. Instead, Ciro score, match is over. Nothing better than that, honestly.
Yeah, and a big moment, I think. It's just a penalty, and I don't think we saw anything transformative from Ciro's display off the bench or anything like that. But I think in the context of where we are this season, everything that's happened so far with Ciro's interview that we discussed in length, and the way that rubbed people up the wrong way, and he subsequently kind of retracted those comments and apologized. But it has felt like we really need to brush that all aside and just, get Ciro the goal scorer again. And, it was just a penalty, as people say, but what a high pressure penalty that was for him to be taking because of all the personal stuff that's going on and the context of it being a potential match-winning moment with the final kick of the game when he's not in very good form and he's not feeling particularly confident. And it was a brilliant penalty, straight into the bottom corner, keeper goes the wrong way. It's exactly, how you'd be taught to take a penalty. So I think he deserves a huge amount of credit. And I'm really hoping that it can be some sort of catalyst to seeing better kind of all-round performances from him from now.
So I thought he improved taking penalties this season so far. He had like 2 and was amazing, which we have to be honest, in the past, especially at the beginning, his penalty weren't really perfect, right? He missed a couple. He scored a couple that were terrible. I think only Tommaso Rocchi took the penalty worse than him. But yesterday, it was really, really important penalty. And we talk about Ciro. Obviously, we have to talk about Taty Castellanos. What's your take on his performance yesterday?
Keeps missing big chances.
Yeah.
I mean, we mentioned after the Feyenoord game, the one that he missed where it would have been 2-1. Look, I'm not going to be too critical of him because I think the thing that I do really like is the way he seems to be linking up with the team. And I think he does seem to work in this team. He finally seems like a proper number 9 who knows how to play in a 4-3-3, who knows how to connect with his players. Not everything is coming off, but he was doing well, holding the ball up, laying it off, finding teammates, good, decent movement from time to time. Maybe he's still lacking a bit of ice in the veins in front of goal, especially that first big chance he had in the second half. But
Luckily,
Yeah,
it was
but
offside.
I don't know about you, but for me, it's kind of offset by maybe it's from watching Chiro all these years, but it's kind of like I do really value a striker who finds chances, and it is encouraging to me that he's working well in the team and he's finding chances. And I feel like surely, I think it's too early to say if these misses are a characteristic of his, or if it's just bad luck, and soon that will turn into goals. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I agree with you, and this is weird. I think you should record it. Uh, I mean, he's putting a lot of pressure. He's definitely helping the team, but you're still a number 9, and you have to score, especially when you have huge chances. I mean, you mentioned the Feyenoord one, which was unbelievable, but yesterday again, he had a couple of very good chances. The one you were mentioning, luckily, was offside, because otherwise, I think I would have invaded the pitch and kicking. But you know, number 9, your goal is to score. So that's where I'm concerned a little bit. But yeah,
Well,
I mean, definitely better than Cancellieri. Don't get me wrong.
yeah, the bar was set low for him there, at least. Yeah, I agree. Although, and I mentioned this because I've just spent the morning writing about it, so I'm going to have an article up about this later. But I think that the Ciro v Taty thing is kind of missing the point, because I think at this stage we kind of have that where we want it to be, which is that Sarri is now alternating between the two players. So they are both getting rest time, recovery time, rotation, and hopefully with a bit more time. And now that Chiro's interview thing is in the past, they can settle into that rotation. So for me, the problem isn't really those two. Obviously, they need to improve. But Lazio's problem with scoring goals, I think a lot of that responsibility, you have to look at Zaccagni and Anderson and say, you need to do more. Because I was looking at this last night, and the only outfield players who've played more games than those two have been Romagnoli, Alberto, and Maricic. So they are continuously being selected from the start. Pedro's had 2 starts this season, and Isaksen's had none. And they're both quality players. Anderson, in particular, is a favourite of Sarri's, so I understand why they're being selected. But the strange thing to me is that Sarri has by now started, after complaining about having games every 3 weeks, 3 days all the time. He has been rotating all the other parts of the team. The fullbacks are rotating, Patrick and Casali are rotating, the midfield is changing all the time. Immobile and Taty are changing. So why are the wingers? Why aren't we seeing a bit more of that, especially when they have 1 goal each this season? And I just think that we're focusing too much on the Taty Ciro thing, where actually the whole team effort of scoring goals has to be considered a bit more.
I think you have to rewrite the article, because Isaksen started 1 game against Monza.
All right, well, it's not in the article, it's just me saying.
That's good. That's good. But yeah, I was going to pick up this issue, because yesterday in the first half, Zaccagni had a good chance. And last year, that was the typical Zaccagni goal, right? He starts wide on the left, he moves center, and he kicks the ball on the second post and usually score. Now, this year, every time he kicks it, he sends it in the stands. So that's what concerned me, because that was his typical goal last year. And this year, he scored just once, but he missed so many chances, so many opportunities. And Felipe Anderson is different, I think, because Felipe Anderson is defending so well that I can see that he's saying, yeah, he's not playing very well moving forward, but it's like we have an extra defender. On the other side, Isaksen, it's probably a nice option, but he's not very good defending. So, especially against Fiorentina, you have the question mark. Okay, I'm bringing Isaksen, but then I can be struggling defending. So this is definitely a thing we have to value. But yesterday was a strange match, Alisson, because You mentioned Zaccagni and Felipe Anderson, but what about Luis Alberto? He had two great chances, and yesterday he didn't play very well. And usually when Luis Alberto don't play well, Zaccagni don't play well, Luis Alberto, Felipe Anderson don't play well, we usually lose. So even though these three players didn't play well, we had 10 shots on target yesterday.
Yeah, most of that must have been in the second half.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll attest to this. The atmosphere in the first half was not good. People are fed up, I think, of seeing that kind of performance from the team this season. The first half was a continuation of, the kind of early season stuff of, oh God, I mean, got a couple of warnings as well. The Beltran goal where he handballed it. I mean, got away with that because, okay, he did control it with his arm, but defense caught snoozing there a lot. And then he hits the post a few minutes after that. And you're thinking, God, it's like the Feyenoord thing we were talking about a few days ago where they had those warnings. It's like, you need to wake up now. And to be fair, they did. And they got into the game more. But how frustrated were people getting by the moves breaking down in the final third? Because there were a few, more than a couple, nice moves. They're working the ball into that area quite well. And quite a few kind of good cutting direct passes from the back. And Felipe Anderson won the ball really high up the pitch a couple of times to create good chances. And every time, and then there's that bizarre moment where Nico Gonzalez kind of backheeled the ball into play and left us with kind of a 3-on-3. But every single time there was one of these openings, whoever was on the ball just froze and couldn't pick the right pass or made the wrong decision or just spent too long allowing Fiorentina to regroup and then had to pass backwards. And by half time, the team was whistled off the pitch. The fans were so frustrated by that.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that in the second half we played much better and Sarri took off Luis Alberto, Guendouzi and Rovella. We changed completely a midfield, which is an interesting point to talk about because I think Kamada needs more time, needs to play more. And you were mentioning the rotation between Castellanos and Ciro Immobile. I think it's time to talk about Luis Alberto and Kamada. The last two games of Luis Alberto weren't good. Against Feyenoord, he was poor. Yesterday, you can see that he's tired. He's not like the player we saw 1 month ago. And now you have Kamada. He came in and did a couple of very interesting passes. I think he deserved to play more. And maybe Sarri needs to rotate a little bit more on midfield because when he changed it completely, Lazio started playing definitely much better.
Yeah. I don't know. There's one moment last night Alberto really wound me up because Guendouzi had the ball in the box and he didn't pick the pass for the run Alberto was making, which was quite tricky, kind of low percentage pass to play. But it was more the reaction. Alberto threw his hands up in the air and he walked off the pitch and was kind of, talking away to himself in anger. But then the thing is, Lazio kept the ball and launched another attack. And he spent the entire attack in an offside position because he was in a mood. And he was like walking back slowly to get on side because he was like shaking his head. And it's like, he's supposed to be the kind of captain at the moment. You can't expect everything to be on a plate for you all the time. And look, he's been absolutely, by far and away, Lazio's most important player this season. So it's not a criticism of him as a player, but I think you just need to set more of an example, especially with so many new players in the team. And you're right. When I was listing off those players who are playing all the time this season, the two that jump out probably are Alberto, because we can't. He's a central midfielder. We can't have him playing that much before he's going to be exhausted, and Marisic because probably Marisic doesn't quite deserve on form to be playing every single game when Pellegrini is not getting a kick and Lazzari's having to, move in and out with Hysaj all the time.
And again, Sarri has spoken about this and he said, well, Pellegrini, it's a little bit too offensive-minded for this type of games. he was expecting Gonzalez to play there and to put pressure on us. But I mean, if he never plays, he will never prove that he can do that job. He can defend as well. And especially because you were mentioning, I mean, Maruzic has been bad in the last couple of games. So, is it Pellegrini worse than this Maruzic? Not sure about that.
But it doesn't even have to be one or the other. I mean, Marasic is, if he's determined to keep using him, he can move him to the right. And there, I think he probably is more comfortable anyway because he's right-footed, very right-footed. and he's able to switch between the two wings. So yeah, I don't know. Going back to Alberto for a second, I think you're right. I think Kamada is the player in the team who has the most Alberto-like qualities. We don't have a player, to be completely clear, who is like Alberto in the sense of his quality and his vision and everything. But I think he brings more of that style to Lazio than any of the other options in the midfield. And you need to be prepared for things where obviously absolutely hoping against hope there are no injuries or big suspensions or anything bad happens this season. But you can't rely on one player too much because you just never know what's going to happen. So I think, yeah, you're right. I think Kamada probably is the guy. And he's just not been playing much at all recently. Same with Isaacson. I was thinking, it's just some of these guys who were getting a decent amount of time for a while, either from the bench or in Kamada's case from the start, just very infrequently seen at this point.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Friday there's Bologna-Lazio, but then there's Lazio-Feyenoord and the derby. I think Luis Alberto has to rest Friday. I really hope he does, because afterwards there are two very important games and we need him fresh.
Yeah. So you're saying the word now, are you? It's within a 2-week window. So yeah, exactly. Massive period. And look, this is a period where it's going to be so easy to look ahead to that double header of Feyenoord and Roma. But look at the league table, guys. Bologna are right there. This is a good Bologna side. I watched their game against Sassuolo on Saturday, where they weren't at their best, but you can still see the quality they've got. Motta is a good coach. He's got them playing good football. They're strong in midfield, actually. So I think it will be a difficult game for a rotated Lazio midfield.
Yeah, but it's not like last year. It's not that we are starting Marcos Antonio and Basic. We can start Cataldi, Kamada, Vecino. I mean, these are all key players. This would have been started last year. So we have the option finally. Let's use it, right?
You're right. I mean, going back to the Alberto thing, do you think because he is like that and, that character, he's got a personality he's got, which can be a bit difficult. I mean, this is something that Sarri's talked about continuously, that he's like a bit of a particular personality, Alberto. But that kind of thing of him getting really annoyed about people not passing to him and so on, does that make it a bit strange for them to have a midfield without him? Because he really is making his presence felt so much, and he's so loud and wants the ball all the time and is demanding things. And is it a bit strange if you then have a midfield where Alberto's voice isn't in there?
Yeah, I understand he's become a leader, but I think if you bring in Cataldi, who's another leader, and Kamada, who has quality, I mean, you signed probably one of the best players this season, and he's hardly playing. So we have to find a solution to this, because going forward, this can be a problem. We cannot be Luis Alberto dependent, at least not every single game. The season is very long. We hope to go further in the Champions League or Europe League. We have the Coppa Italia coming on. We have a league where we have to recover points because we are 7th now. We are not where we want to be. We need to start. I mean, this is the 3rd win in a row in Serie A, right? We need to start this win to recover points. And if Luis Alberto play every single game, he won't be able to play anymore in February, where the season is decided. So
I thought Sarri said something quite interesting in the press conference last night after the game, because I think after every game, more or less, and before every game and at every press conference, he's being asked about the new players and the adaptation and all this. And he said last night that, it's not really so much about the new players. Obviously, there have been issues, people coming from new leagues yet to learn the language and so on. But the issue has also been, and even more so, that the old players, as in the ones who are already at the club, haven't been performing at the same level they were last season, which you have to say is true. But we're so distracted by the new players coming in that's been the focus. And then the other thing is he said, we're at a stage where, or we're approaching as part of the season now where we can't talk about old and new players anymore. And he's right. It's November tomorrow. It does take a while for players to settle. And I always say players should have more than one season, especially coming from a new league. But they have been here for months now. So I think maybe it is time to stop this kind of mental separation between old and new and start thinking about just the evidence we're seeing.
And what are we seeing then?
Well, I think we're seeing that some players have settled quicker than others. I think we are seeing the benefit of moving from Serie A versus moving from abroad, because I think Rovella is probably the quickest settling player in this team now. Kamada was the one who made the quickest impact, but Rovella is the one who seems to be a part of this team the quickest. And I think it is important, like you're saying, the rotation is the key to this, because we need everyone to be getting as many opportunities as they can. And that kind of comes back to the point I was making about the wingers. I get why he's selecting Zaccagni and Anderson as much as he is. But if he's then saying players aren't performing at the levels they were last season, well, okay, Anderson has at times this year, and we know Sarri loves Anderson and he thinks he's got the potential.
He said it.
Yeah, he said last night he could play for Real Madrid and Barcelona if he wanted to. But Zaccagni, it's a harder argument to make perhaps there. I just think if we're going to stop talking about old and new, we need to give the new a bit more space to show what it can do.
Yeah, and I think that Pedro has now, at the beginning of the season, Pedro wasn't fit, and that's why I think Isaacsen was coming in early in the season. Now that Pedro's fit, I think the first option from the bench is Pedro, and this is why Isaacsen is playing less. But seeing this Zaccagni, I think maybe Pedro and Isaacsen should be starting some games. And I mean, coming in against Sassuolo, I thought that was the best game of Zaccagni, and I think that coming from the bench a little bit gave him extra motivation. He realized, whoa, I lost my job, so I have to pick up and start playing better. And I think this is something we have to do, especially now that we have so many options. Wingers, Ciro Immobile in midfield. We have options. Let's use them from the start, not only.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to create a culture where this isn't an issue. It's not about who's starting the game. There isn't that hierarchy. We got to be clear. This is something Inzaghi's good at with Inter. It's like, because he's constantly changing certain positions, I think people are aware of the fact that they have a game in and a game out. And it's not necessarily a mark of a hierarchy if you're not starting against Bologna on Friday. It's just showing that the game on Tuesday is perhaps more important or more suited to your characteristics or whatever. But the idea that people are getting upset about not starting every single game just isn't helpful to anyone, because we don't want players to be, that's not football in 2023. You can't really do that. But I think that has to be a kind of cultural thing. People have to be accepting of that and happy about that and offer encouragement in other ways from the bench, or, what they can do off the bench. I think that has to be kind of a cultural thing as well, that people really embrace that.
Alasdair, before we wrap it up, I have this strange statistic from Lazio Atletico Madrid. So in the last 9 games, considering Champions League at Serie A, Lazio scored 5 goals in the last 10 minutes and extra time. 5 goals in the last 9 games. And of these 5 goals, 4 have bring Lazio points. Obviously, there's the Provedel goal against Atletico Madrid. There's the Pedro goal against Celtic. Again, Vecino against Atalanta. Ciro Immobile last night. There's the Pedro goal that didn't bring points against Feyenoord. So 10 points from these 5 goals in the last 10 minutes. And of these 5 goals, 4 coming from the bench. These are huge numbers for Lazio, right?
Yeah, and I think the bench has been one of the really positive things of this season. I mean, it's not something we could count on last year really so much, but we've seen that happen time and again. And I think as well that tells you a lot about the benefits of having a solid defensive base, because you're only, you're giving yourself a chance if your defense is playing well. Because even if things aren't ticking in the final third, like last night's a good example, Lazio under pressure for a lot of the first 20 minutes or so, but survived. And after that, okay, they spent the rest of the first half just being frustrated and things weren't working, but they also weren't really giving much away. And, getting frustrated throughout the second half again because the chances weren't going in. But if you're keeping that clean sheet, you always give yourself a chance. And I think the defense is playing such a big part in that, weirdly, in the late goals. Because, well, it's certainly in the late goals being as decisive as they have been. That's kind of stating the obvious, but you know what I mean.
Well, I wanted to point it out that a bench has a lot to say. I mean, even yesterday, the crosses of Pedro, the headers of Vecino, 2 players coming from the bench, and the penalty taken was by Ciro. Again, another player coming from the bench. Even against Celtic, is Guendouzi, who came in from the bench, who passes to Pedro, who scores. This is huge. But the other point is, even yesterday, where we didn't play well, we keep up fighting till the end. Even against Feyenoord, we were 3-0 down, and we still keep trying to play, even if were playing badly. I think even our mindset has changed a little bit. I mean, in the past years, I remember games where we got 1-0 down and it was over. It was finished for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, I still think we have a lot to learn about how this team responds to those situations. Because the comeback against Celtic was fantastic, but it was also fantastic because of its rarity. I mean, that is still an issue. Last season, the defense was historically good, but we can't rely on that level of excellence every year. And I think the team probably does need to get better at responding to being behind. Because I mean, the Celtic game's the only one, isn't it? Am I wrong about that? Where we've gone behind and still won the game.
Well, I think we didn't have that many games where we felt behind, right?
Yeah, we just lost the ones where we felt behind.
Yeah. Well, against Atalanta, we were 2-0, then 2-0, and then we won.
Yeah, but 2-0 up.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a bit different. But yeah, I mean, so I do think it's a good thing. Definitely, being able to score late goals and staying in the game and all that is a sign of good personality in the team. But I think I still need a bit more evidence about the responding to being behind thing, because we haven't been great at that. Although, like you say, I guess recently we've not been behind all that often, which has been nice.
Yeah, two clean sheets in a row for Serie A. That's huge.
Yeah, and 3 wins as well. And look, I think none of us are going to pretend we've hit a massive turning point and the performances have been perfection. But if you look at the league table now, we have actually pretty much pulled off that recovery, as in we are now in the top 4 race again. We're not in the relegation battle. The 3 points between Lazio and the top 4 at this point.
And we have to point out that now we are 7th, and 6th is Fiorentina. We already played against them. 5th is Napoli. We played against them. 4th is Atalanta. We played against them. 3rd is Milan. We played against them. 2nd is Juventus. We played against them. Inter is the only one of the top 6 missing. And Friday we're playing against Bologna, who is 8th. I mean, we played against all the top 8, and we're there. I mean, this is a good sign, right? And considering that the last 3 games we won, but we played against Fiorentina, Sassuolo, Atalanta, 3 very good teams. It's not like we played against the last 3, even because we would have lost against the last 3. But, this is an important message.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, I think we're 7 points worse off than last season. And so I think really what this all comes down to is just that terrible start. Those first 2 games against Genoa and Lecce. And that's not an excuse for this team.
No.
But still it was really that terrible start that made this such an uphill battle and has resulted in things taking a bit of time to get going again. And it's the team doesn't have to achieve perfection to still have a good season. I think we're aware of that, but there are still definitely areas where I feel like can get better. So, but yeah, 1-0 win against Fiorentina is a fantastic result, considering the season they've been having. Got a good team, got a good coach. Thankfully, they have a terrible record against Lazio. So that goes on. They haven't beaten us in the Olimpico since 2015-16 season.
Yeah, so your video.
At least someone did.
Yeah. Do you think it was penalty to wrap it up?
Yeah. Nowadays, yeah. I mean, it's not necessarily a rule that I agree with if there's no intention about it. But if you've got the outstretched arm in the natural position and the ball hits it, yeah.
Yeah, I think you can see it from the distinti that he had he forgot his arm. I don't know what I think he was trying to push a little bit Vecino before, so that's why he kept his arm so far. So yeah, obviously for me it was a penalty, and good 3 points. Good to have Ciro back. I think he's gonna start against Bologna after this.
Yeah, you would have thought so. He will think so. You expect. And also, it's probably worth wrapping up by mentioning that because we did talk about in depth that interview he did and the way that's upset people, and there was a lot going on there. But that relationship seems last night to have been repaired, to be honest, because the whole crowd was singing his name when he was warming up. The whole crowd singing his name when he's coming off the bench. And then when he scored, it was basically a Ciro party in there. So, and he's waving at the fans and applauding the fans and all that. So, seems to be better.
It's a little bit weird because at the stadium, fans always cheers Ciro, always. Even when he wasn't playing that well, he always had the support of the fans in the stadium. It's more on social media outside the stadium that he has been criticized. So it was weird a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to go back over the entire podcast we did on this, but yeah, it did. The whole thing was very, very strange. But yeah, I do hope that last night and getting that goal at the Olimpico again and the response, I just hope that whole atmosphere can help him feel whatever he needs to be feeling about this season and this team and everything, because we need him. I disagree with the notion that he's finished or it's time to phase him out and all this stuff. I just don't agree with that. I think he's still got a hell of a lot to give, but he's just in a bad run of form. I think the reason people overreact in the way that they have been, both Lazio fans and non-Lazio fans, is just that we're used to a ridiculous level of consistency with him. And that's because he's so good, So, okay, maybe he's not as consistent as he used to be, but most strikers aren't. It doesn't mean he's suddenly a useless striker. It just means that he might need a bit more rotation.
Yeah,
fine.
As Sarri mentioned, he didn't train that much in the last couple of months ago, so he needs to train and to recover. Anyway, I think we can wrap it up here. Thanks everybody for listening. So just to recap, a very bizarre night. Patrick not winning the Ballon d'Or and Lazio getting 3 points, but we'll take that.
Again, next year, Patrick.
Next year, obviously. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. Thanks to all our Patreons. We appreciate your support. and we'll be back after Bologna Lazio. Thanks, Alasdair.
Cheers.
Ciao, ciao.